Welcome everybody. For those that haven't met me, my name's Graham Spivey. I'm the Communications Officer for the UK IT Leaders Group. So we are a little bit younger than our fantastic international partner, HMG Strategy. I'll let Hunter introduce HMG in a minute. So the UK IT Leaders Group has been going as a group for a couple of years. We're formed by Dave Jones, Northern-based, Yorkshire-based CIO, and he formed the Northern IT Leaders a couple of years ago. And the group then grew out into North, South, and Midlands, and we are now all consolidated until we get back to doing some regional stuff in person under the UK IT Leaders Group brand. So there's over 1,000 in the group, and nearly 500 of those 1,000 using our free comms app every day. UK IT Leaders, for those that haven't been involved before, is a IT leaders group for IT leaders. So IT being innovative tech, so we've got folks from across the IT leadership or across the boardroom who are interested in IT and innovative tech. And yeah, we are a members for members group. All of our assistance and help to the members is free and without strings. And we put together, during lockdown, we've been doing a weekly innovation round table, and we get together the group to help collaborate, share ideas, share innovation. There are no sales folks of any kind in the group. There are no vendor folks of any kind in the group, and no recruitment folks of any kind in the group. So it really is a IT leaders group that's about helping IT leaders. Today we're here for our virtual summit, learning from the past and present to reshape the future of business. We are blessed to have so many top technology executives as our guest speakers, and we'll be letting those folks do the talking. So they're going to be sharing their experiences and views with everybody. And we are blessed to have our international partner, HMG Strategy. As I say, I'll let Hunter introduce HMG. A number of CIOs in the network, both sides of the Atlantic, put the UK IT Leaders and HMG together to start talking. This is our second virtual summit together, and we'll be doing a number of summits over the next 2 years. And HMG founders, we found them, as I say, by CIO and IT leader introduction, but it was a perfect fit. We were delighted to see they have the same DNA and the same outcomes, and you know, all about the group as opposed to all about individuals. So Hunter, over to you if I've not missed anything.
Great tee up, Graham. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for being here today. You know, I think we have a really awesome agenda here today, and good afternoon. It's morning here in the States, of course. Is my video feed okay? Is the sound audio okay, folks? Good. Thank you. You know, it's a thrill to be here with you. I'm not going to be too long-winded here, but this isn't something we just cooked up overnight, Graham, Dave, and I, and all of you all here. You know, many folks on the Zoom cast here have 30 plus years of experience in our industry. And when we went into this pandemic, I knew something was very different was going to happen to the leadership profile, the leadership style, and how we needed to lean in and embrace this new normal, right? And what a strange experience this whole thing has been. Surreal in many regards, a true pandemic. Who would have ever really thought that this would play out? And that's just wave one, right? So get ready for wave two if you haven't already begun to experience the second lockdown, which we're starting to see in certain pockets over here in the States. Just thrilled the fact that Graham, Dave, and I, and Tony Healy, a big credit to Tony Healy, Dave Roberts, for having the vision and thinking through, gently guiding us together. And Graham, Dave, and I, over many Zoom calls, thank God to Eric Wan. He's a great client of ours, back cover of my book. Eric Wan says top tech leader network in North America here. He's the CEO of Zoom, if you don't know the name. But put this gently together, and I think we built this fabulous idea of having a global platform, a global resource, a program that can help refine your leadership skills, help ensure your success with the joint collaboration and mind share, really provide you a platform of thought leadership, research, and practical peer guidance, practical peer influence that you can't get from a traditional research house. You can't get from a Gartner, you can't get from a Forrester, and you, maybe we'll hear from Khalid here in a minute. I think you probably can get something from Khalid at a Big Four, Deloitte. He's a brilliant thought leader. So again, delighted to be here and excited for this partnership. We've been looking for a partner in the UK for probably over a decade. And I think as Graham teed it up, this is a perfect, we're blessed that we found each other. It's a perfect scenario and our DNA does fit. I'd like to just plug my new book, Enterprise 2025. Just finished writing it about 3 months ago in the pandemic. Wiley's my publisher. I'd like to give a digital copy to everyone who's in attendance today. So my team will follow up with Graham and Dave to ensure that happens. And let's get going. I didn't come here to run the show or really to lead. I came here to be a coach, a facilitator, if you will, and a moderator, along with an incredible agenda, world-class agenda here, folks, as we dive into it. Let's get going. Reimagining the business and the future work. Graham, we ready? Take it away, right? Thank you. First up, reimagining the business and the future of work. We have panelist Freddie Quick, CTO at Higher Times Education. We have Khalid Kark, Research Director and CIO program from Deloitte, a brilliant thought leader in our industry. And with Dave Roberts, Global IT Director of Stantec. Two of the three I think you know very well. And why don't we just start? Brief introductions, Khalid. You really impressed me. We talked a couple of times in preparation for this summit here today. A real thought leader, a visionary. And by the way, Deloitte is truly, as you know, a world-class global Fortune 500 leading audit, consulting, and tax kind of a firm. Khalid, a little bit about your background and a little bit about the context of why you're so passionate about the IT leader now today, leading through this crisis, leading through this surreal time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. Hunter, it's a pleasure to be here and be talking about, as you said, something I'm really passionate about. I've been connected to the CIOs and tech leaders for a couple of decades now. And I feel very, very strongly that this pandemic, of course, there's the downside of having a pandemic, but the silver lining in this is that this has given a fairly significant opportunity for tech leaders, not just to step up, which everybody did. And I'm glad that we as leaders kind of stood up to the challenge thrown at us. But as I'm talking to tech leaders across the board, especially the Fortune 500, there is a huge opportunity ahead of us to really shape the future of business. And that's what I'm passionate about. I'm actually seeing the value that a tech leader can bring to an organization in times of crisis. Having a resilient organization is great, but what the CEOs and what we're hearing from a lot of the leaders is that we want our CIOs to be drivers, not just partners. And so really excited about the opportunity that we have today. As I said, I've been around for a couple of decades. I led the CIO practice at Forrester, and about 5 years ago, I joined Deloitte, almost 6 years now. And we're doing thought leadership directed to really technology leaders, CIOs, CDOs, CTOs, and we're finding that this is really an inflection point for a lot of the leaders to kind of look ahead and look at a role that's going to be very different in 3 to 5 years from what it is right now.
Hey, Cal, a little bit about the research and the rigor, please.
Yeah, so we anything that we put out has a very specific focus on a peer conversation. So typically when we put out a survey, we're talking to people across the globe. The recent survey that we put out on the role of an emerging leader, and specifically tech leader, we had about 1,300 to 1,400 respondents. We had people from all industries participating in it. And then we kind of look at the data in multiple ways and try to drive really analysis based off of that. some really rich conversations with CEOs, CFOs, board members as part of that, really getting a 360 view around what the role of the CIO needs to be and where it's headed. So typically we put out 2 to 3 pieces every quarter, but they're very steeped in making sure it's a peer conversation. We're researching and pulling together thoughts and perspectives from not just CIOs, but also CXOs to really drive the conversation forward.
Yeah, follow-up question on that, Cal. The top 3 leadership challenges and areas that a tech leader can perform uniquely in the C-suite, the line of business, and the board to really make a mark right now?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things. So first is, as I said, we looked at companies that were outperforming their competition, and we looked at what are they doing differently. And of course, the thing that we anticipated, they're using tech differently, first off, right? So when we look at, there's multiple research things that we've done where we've looked at boards, and if you have a board that is tech savvy, that has at least one member that's tech savvy, you're likely to outperform your competition by about 20 to 25% in terms of stock value, just one measure, right? So that's one. The fact is that what CIOs need to do today, and specifically what high performing companies are doing, not rocket science, right? So 3 things. Focusing on the customer, and not just focusing, everybody says we're focused on the customer. They're actually maniacally focused on ensuring that the customer is not about customer engagement. It is about engaging the customer in the life cycle of product development. It's engaging the customer in the iterative product development that you're doing, et cetera. The second is the focus on growth. The high performing companies by far look at growth. If they had $1, they'd rather spend it on growing the business than to create efficiencies or saving the business. Then the third is innovation. Those are the 3 attributes. The innovation is, I mean, I've talked to CIOs that are investing in companies. One CIO has invested in 49 startups to stay ahead of the competition, and that's where they get their innovation. So it doesn't have to be an in-house innovation, but that's kind of the mindset for a high performer. So I would say, again, nothing rocket science for all of us, knowing that it has to be customer, it has to be growth, and it has to be innovation. But the way they're doing it is they're actually pushing the boundaries of where a traditional CIO would go and look beyond that. Another CIO now, head of transformation, really is driving where technology is part of R&D as a core component. So half of the R&D is run by the tech folks, right? And so that's the type of thing that CIOs are doing really to drive the business forward around changes. Now, one other thing I'd say today is much, much more important than any of that, which is great, is reimagining the future of business. Many CIOs are being pulled together to think about work. How does automation help? How do roles change in this environment where nobody can go to the office? Workforce, which is different skill sets, what retraining, reskilling do you need? And much more importantly, workplace. What does the workplace of the future look like? We're not going to get back to the cubicles. We're not going to have office spaces. Many CEOs have said, why are we having 800 offices across the globe? And so rethinking and reimagining how people need to come together and think about workplace as a very different dimension of what exists today. Of course, you need collaboration tools. Of course, you need a lot of the other things, but reimagining the workplace and the workforce and the work is something that they're very, very involved in right now.
Hey, Khalid, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for teeing it up. I couldn't have said it better myself. You nailed it. Really appreciate it. We'll circle back to you in just a minute. Over to Freddie. Freddie, quick, CTO of Higher Times Education. Freddie, we've been through this together now for a couple of years. You were instrumental in connecting Graham and I and Dave. When you think about the pandemic and reimagining and reinventing your business, what did it look like for you? And how do you take this opportunity to really accelerate an innovation and transformation agenda?
Oh, that is a very big topic, right? And I can only speak from my personal experience. So with Times Higher Education. It is well known to be a publisher of World University Rankings. That's what most people know us of. And we have a long history with publishing the magazine for the higher education. So this is what we know. This is what we have been doing for many, many years, for 50 years. And a part of my role here is to try and help your organization to become a data company, right? So everybody wants to be a data company today. And it's easy to say that, but it's actually very hard to get going, because when you have such a legacy, how do you go? And as we talk about, how do you go from being so used to doing things in a certain way to now suddenly trying to do things that you hear everybody talks about and you want to try and do that? It's actually very, very tough. And what is interesting about this organization is that it's been a sort of spin-off from the parent company. So now we have a unique situation whereby it's no longer a typical established company that's got a legacy, but it's also not a complete startup that's got no legacy. So we're in a very interesting position whereby we are trying to be a startup, but we have huge legacy, and we need to find a way to transform ourselves, not just into the business world of doing something different, but also dealing with this situation that I think is also very new for a lot of people that has been there for a long time, or also for even by people like me who's been there, done that. But this is also a very interesting combination. But I think the key thing that I can bring to the table as a technology leader is to think of myself as also the business. I think we as technology leaders, sometimes we fall into the trap of, hey, we are there just to do what people tell us. Yes, I've been there, I've been publishing for a long, long time, and that is how I was used to doing things. I was not asked about innovation, but I realized that actually a lot of the things that I've done behind the scene has been very innovative, like pushing the boundaries of going from relational technology to NoSQL technology. That is a big thing. And in those days, people don't believe you, right? And then we went from doing waterfall to agile. Again, people don't believe you. It's like, why are you spending more money doing the same work with more people? That's how people think of doing agile, right? And I have to run through all those tools. And I realized that actually one of the things that I've learned over the years is that technology leaders were very well placed to deal with change. We're so used to constant change in technology. And this is one of the biggest challenges that most established companies are struggling with, because their speed of change in the organization is much slower than the speed of change on the outside. I'm sure many of you have heard about this phrase, yeah? And because of that, it's a huge challenge. You run the risk of your potential demise if you don't do something. And I think we as technology leaders, we now have a perfect opportunity to take all that learning that we've done to help our organization. Look at this pandemic. When everybody worries about being able to deal with change, I'll tell you this, my organization, the product engineering organization, we are so comfortable. And now we're trying to help everybody to get on board and be used to this way of working.
Hey, Freddie, you had a new CEO just start in April. That kind of gets a reset, right, for the whole C-suite. And isn't it come down to always people, and how do you change the storytelling, and how do you change what's important for the company? Data is king, data is key, but the customer journey, as Khalid dialed to, is critical from cradle to grave. Is that whole idea of dialing into current markets, new markets, innovative markets.
Yeah, I think, so in a way, people may think that, wow, during this pandemic, you have a CEO, there must be a real challenge. But I think we are also very fortunate that that is also a catalyst for further change, because if you talk about change, usually it's the cultural aspects of change that you're looking for, right? And sometimes with new leadership, it can help you that change. I've been in a few organizations whereby when I thought that we could find that balance for change, I was wrong. But in this organization, I'm seeing good signs that it's got a good combination. And here's an example. If you look at the leadership team, probably 60% are new people, 40% has been there a while. Compare that to maybe a year or two ago, it would have been the majority being people that's been there a long time with very few new people. So without that balance, it's very hard to effect any real change. So I think the new CEO coming on board is helping us, and he's also got a lot of experience from elsewhere running business in a more digital way. So I think that has been a great leverage for us, in my opinion.
Excellent. Stay with us, Freddie. We'll circle back to you in just a minute. Next up, Dave Roberts, Global IT Director of Stantec. Dave, welcome to the program.
Hi, Hunter. How are you doing?
Great to see you. It's digitally, of course. I love breaking bread with you over there and having a soda or a glass of wine. But what's on your mind now relative to driving an innovation agenda as a top IT leader?
Well, I think a lot of what Khalid and both Freddie have said resonates with me, and it was interesting, what Khalid was referring to around the client focus, and that's absolutely what what we're focusing on in Stantec. The client is at the center of what we do, and to sort of lend on extend really from what Khalid was saying. We talk about growth and we talk about innovation, but we also talk about people and excellence, and all those things really bring the digital agenda to the foreground. And what we're growing, we continue to grow through both organic growth and inquisitive growth as an organization. We're 23,000 people globally across 400 offices, so it's quite a large organization. But we see that growth has also got to be supported by excellence. The excellence being the ability to actually continue to grow through acquisition and continue to have that growth within your organization, but be able to integrate it in a way that technology is really driving that agenda. So you've said this many times, Hunter. We are the CEO of technology within our businesses, and that absolutely. I remember you saying that back in 2014 at the first London event that we first met at, and I absolutely agree with that. It's it is down to us as the IT leaders of our organization to not only look about how we can make the business more efficient and run more productively, but also then pushing those boundaries, looking at the digital products and services that we can then take our businesses forward and reinvent our businesses, and the reimagining of what we do and our core services is all being driven through technology. So an incredibly exciting time to be in technology, in that digital space, and I think absolutely think things will continue to change over the next 5 years, and exciting time to be in technology.
Yeah, it's best time ever, I say it, but it really is. And to lead passionately, lead courageously, to lead a digital disruption agenda. I mean, how thrilling and exciting is not finally to get a pass and a green light from the CEO, go digitally disrupt our company or we're going to get disrupted, right?
Absolutely, and that's where there's been a real shift in thinking around the funding that's now available, and the that momentum that's really behind the digital agenda. Incredibly exciting time. Lots of great things are coming out of the organization, and one of the things I'm really passionate about is connecting people across the different geographical regions. In my role, I'm responsible for everything outside of North America, so I take in Latin America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Asia Pacific, and what I'm doing is looking at all the great work that's going on in those regions and looking at where's the IP reuse. So taking great ideas that are coming out of our team down in New Zealand and Australia, and then implementing those into the UK and Europe, and likewise with Latin America as well. So there's really lots of interesting, cool things that we're doing. And the big thing about Stantec is it's about how we enhance communities as well. So it's tech for the greater good of the overall community. So lots of really great things to be involved in. So it's the best time ever to be in technology.
Dave, great to see you, and thanks so much for coming on today's summit. Always fun to be with you. Kind of closing comments. We got to move into our next session, but Khalid, when you think about it, how would you summarize the opportunity right now to be the tech leader in the C-suite, the line of business, and the boardroom?
Yeah, two quick things. One, we asked CEOs, what is and it was an open-ended question, right? What word would describe a successful CIO in the next 3 years for you? And guess the words that they used. Of course, you need to have a leader that understands leadership, has communication skills, is strategic, is partner. But here are 70% of CXOs use these words: change leader, visionary, agile, innovative, creative, right? So think about those words as a leader and think about how you instill those attributes in yourself and your leadership team in driving it. Second thought I'd leave you with is we did, jointly with Wall Street Journal, we did a global survey of 5 billion or over companies and asked their CEOs who in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be a key driver of your business strategy. And 50% of them said it was going to be the tech leader, not specifically the CIO, could be the CDO or whoever. but 50%. And the rest of the 50% was split up across CFOs, CEOs, CMOs, COOs, and board. So half of the CEOs of larger companies are looking at you to drive their business strategy in the next 3 to 5 years. We better step up and we better take that challenge and take it home. So again, we've been talking a lot about getting a seat at the table. That question is gone for right now. Everybody's expecting us to step up and lead. It's up to us to find the right skill set and the right capabilities in our leadership teams to drive that forward.
Thank you so much, Cal. Great tee up for the whole program today. Great to have you on the program. Great to see you too. Freddie, final comment?
Yeah, I agree with what Khalid said. I think one thing I would add is that we as technology leaders, I think we're very used to helping to run the business, right? To drive, efficiencies and drive incremental innovation. I think now in this brave new world, we have the responsibility also to help to change the business. It's not somebody else's agenda. We have a responsibility to do both, right? So maybe for some leaders, they do one or the other because most of your job description tells you you're either a run leader or a change leader. But as to be a successful technology leader, we have to be able to do both, because without the fundamentals of taking care of the basic things, which is what they mean by the operational side of things, they will not give you a chance to help them to change because you have no trust. They have no trust. There's no credibility. So I think as a technology leader to be successful, we have to always demonstrate the ability to do both, right? And it's better to show than to tell. So I think we need to do a lot of things to make sure that we continue to drive ways to create that visibility, be explicit about what we say we'll do, and make sure that we do it.
Excellent, Freddie. Great comments. Great to see you as well. Hey, Dave, final word?
Yeah, I think it's, many years ago, we used to talk about shadow IT. And it was all about how do we control this? How do we go on top of the shadow IT? And I think where we are now as technology leaders, we need to be able to bring together all these different areas of the organization to work together as one sort of technology unit in that respect. So innovation doesn't just happen within the technology or the IT function. This is happening all around us. And I think the real power of that network is bringing all these people together to create some really great innovative solutions. And I think having a different view of it, if you haven't got any shadow IT happening, that's an issue. You need other people involved in technology. I think the technologist's role is to bring that all together and make sure that you're delivering it in the right way. And that's something I think is really powerful.
Brilliant, Dave. Great to see you as well, and congratulations too. I think we recognize you as the top CIO of the award recipient. So good to see you again. And there you have it, folks. What really matters now is winning in the C-suite, the line of business, and the board. Best time ever to be a tech leader. Next up, securing the future of work, how cyber AI learns on the job. Welcome, Dave Palmer. Dave Palmer is the Director of Technology for Darktrace. Darktrace, really interesting company, a great partner of HMG Strategies. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Hunter. Delighted to be here. My first HMG event, first time at IT Leaders. It's lovely meeting everyone.
Yeah, I love Darktrace. You guys have a really brilliant company. Your former CEO, now head of strategy and AI. Nicole's a great friend. Most folks know who you are, but for those who might not, set a little context on Darktrace and your origins.
Yeah, so Darktrace is all about finding and interrupting cyber attacks or impersonation attacks once they've already got inside of a business. And the idea here is this sits alongside our protective defenses that we've all already invested in. And rather than focusing on attacks that have been seen in the past or seen in other organizations, which is the role of those protective defenses, instead this focuses on learning about our own businesses, the people in our business, how they work together, the systems they use, how do all the systems hang together. And the goal here is to create an immune system, just like we have a biological immune system that catches what gets past our protective skin around our bodies. We want to do the same for the enterprise. And fundamentally, this is all about the fact that you can't imagine everything that can possibly go wrong. So I used to run the global networks for GCHQ and for MI5 as well. I used to look after the majority of their data centers too. And that was a fascinating, if somewhat stressful job where, of course, you're dealing with security all day, every day. And despite the ability to invest in security with an amazing security culture in organizations like those, what Edward Snowden showed us is if a sysadmin can convince a bunch of people he sits with to keep their passwords in an envelope in his locker in case they get hit by a bus, then if you haven't imagined that someone malicious inside of your business is using everyone else's passwords and capable of doing harm, then you simply won't catch it. So this immune system idea is here to catch those things you can't imagine, to react to things when we're all sat at home on the sofa on a Friday night and we haven't got people staring at screens or reaction speeds of 2 seconds when something starts to go wrong. And we really want to do it in any business, no matter what line of work it's in. So it's in factories and office locations, as you would imagine. You can have this across your cloud, your data centers, in the collaboration apps, emails, but it's also in the North Pole, in an Arctic research station. It's in nuclear power stations, Coca-Cola, and we're shortly going to get it into space on swarms of microsatellites. And I bring that up because it's a fundamental goal here that no matter what the complexity of a business, these approaches can be applied to it. And that's really exciting.
Interesting times. Let's talk to us a little bit about this AI and how it learns in the context of the unique enterprise, protecting this new distributed threat landscape, which is so much bigger than where we were just 7 months ago.
I love talking about the AI. It's actually very unusual for someone to ask about it. And so I will behave myself and answer briefly because I'd like to talk about it for 2 hours. It's surprising how rarely people ask how this actually works. But fundamentally, what we're talking about is no matter how we work, whether we're on our laptops, whether we're using Zoom or Teams or other collaboration apps, Google, Microsoft, etc., then data is being generated about what we're doing. Somewhere there will be data about our behavior, or it might be in networks and data centers and industrial control systems. And by feeding this data about the pattern of life of people and systems into sensors nearby, and sensors, I mean a piece of software rather than necessarily physical ones, you can just feed all that complexity into what is essentially a series of AI subsystems. One is, let me learn about every person, every device, create millions of these patterns of lives and work out when something weird is happening. The next one is learning about your infrastructure controls. And so if Dave's got his laptop hacked and it's phoning home to Portugal or a legitimate looking place over in America, but actually with inappropriate behaviors, what buttons can the AI press to interrupt that without disrupting normal business? And then there's a third AI subsystem, which is all about investigating and root cause analysis, so that when we show something to a security team member, they don't have to sit there puzzled trying to work out what on earth is going on. It's fully laid out for them, and they can focus on how do we stop this from happening again in future.
Interesting times, right? What are the new threats that you see out there that just weren't there 6 months ago?
And there has been a big shift. Criminals have shifted with the pandemic far more than, frankly, I had expected. There is a huge amount of very subtle impersonation going on, where rather than just hitting people with malicious emails with attachments in it or links, then we're starting to see attacks where maybe a variety of executive team and board members will be impersonated over the course of a week, targeting, say, a high-ranking finance team member, and each of them just asking one specific question to which the person will reply, likely in text, you know, not clicking on emails, not putting malicious payloads in there, but just enticing out tiny bits of a jigsaw puzzle the result of which you've potentially given away some quite sensitive information back to a single criminal. There's also automated attacks really scaling up in the email space. So one client 2 weeks ago hit with 1,442 malicious emails in 1 hour from 50 different domains around the world, where ultimately the criminals were hiding, in this case, in an American university, a legitimate American university, so that anything looking at reputation or signatures would let it through. You only need one person to click on, one person out of the 1,400 emails to click on that and potentially trigger a ransomware event or something. So that is worrying, and definitely ransomware is on the rise, particularly against organizations that just can't take any more downtime. So we've seen it hitting factories, we've seen it hitting schools and universities, and the criminals are aiming at businesses that are already stretched and very likely just to pay the ransom immediately because they can't afford to be off air anymore. So there's quite a wide variety of going on. The last thing I would highlight is these collaboration apps that are letting us all survive as businesses in remote working, whether it's the Zooms and the Teams or the Office 365s or SharePoints or whatever, because they're exposed to the internet by definition, criminals are absolutely hammering and hammering on people's passwords in those environments. And we all know the old security tales about have decent passwords, they've got to be long, don't reuse them somewhere else. But criminals are getting in quite frequently. And there's really two things that we're seeing happen after that. The first is maybe they just do something simple like set up an email forwarding rule. So any email you get for the rest of time will be copied to the criminal. They never need to log into your systems again. The chances of you catching them are unlikely. The second is where you have a modern organization with fused identity. So you've resolved identity across a lot of your different infrastructure verticals. Then getting the password right in a SaaS application may well mean they can now log in over remote desktops or VPNs or come directly into the data center using that same password and start to cause harm down there. Again, this is a really nice trick. Cause all the noise up in a system that maybe is less important to you, but once they've got that password right, come into the crown jewels that you really care about.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for coming on today's summit and our program. Brilliant insights, really appreciate it. You know, it's a UK, London or original company. It's a global company now. You guys are ripping it up. Congratulations on all your success. And by the way, you can learn more about Darktrace if you go to HMG Strategies Marketplace. More on that a little bit later, or reach out directly, right?
Absolutely. So we're actually a Cambridge-based organization rather than London. Quite proud of our Cambridge heritage, but would be delighted to help anyone, whether it's something for the long term or you just simply worried about things that you want to have a chat. So it doesn't have to be a sales pitch. And I realize some of the reluctance to reach out to vendors sometime, but I'm not involved in sales. So drop me a line anytime and I'll be delighted to help you out.
By the way, Darktrace is an HMG top pick. They're our partner, a supporting partner for today's summit. Please, when they reach out to you or reach out to them proactively, be time well spent. Thanks so much for coming on the program. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Hey, next up, we have leading digital innovation in a highly distributed environment. I think we'd all agree we're all living in a highly distributed environment. Let's welcome our panelists to the program. First up, our dear friend, Tony Healy. Tony, again, as I credited you in the opening remarks, you really gently over time pushed Graham and I and Dave together. Brilliant job. Thank you so much again.
Very welcome.
Tony's the Chief Digital Innovation Officer of Mobica. Most of you folks should know of the company, I think. Really creative, really interesting company. A little bit high level, Tony, on the company, your go-to-market. And by the way, I do want to thank you for being recognized a year ago when we were together in person as a top tech leader that matters for HMG.
Thanks, Hunter. So Mobica, in short, is really an awesome tech company. So we do onshore, nearshore, on-premise technology innovation with a whole variety of clients and customers, develop lots of really cool tech and geeky stuff for them.
And clients include that you can talk about?
A lot of blue chip organizations. So some of them have got very catchy theme tunes when their processes are spoken about on TV. We've got some good automotive clients, unfortunately, whose drivers don't normally indicate out of the middle lane on the motorway. So we've got a whole variety of clients in silicon, automotive, etc.
Awesome. Great job there. You know, when you think about the future of tech and you as a tech leader and Mobica as being so uniquely different, what's your leadership style in this pandemic, and what have you been able to accomplish driving innovation and a digital agenda that the pandemic, the crisis allowed you to do?
It's just another different way of working, you know. So when lockdown hit, we were partway through rolling out a brand new CRM product across the organization, and then to suddenly switch to do that completely remotely is a new learning curve. So everything's online, everything's digital. You know, having a good collaboration platform's absolutely key to this. Keeping in constant contact with people, securing that enterprise as well, because obviously more people who are now working remotely, there's having your device encrypted, there's having potentially looking at home routers and home broadband connections as well now. But it's really just thinking outside that box. So we can't stop work. We have to continue doing what we're doing. We just do it in a very different and new way. And in some essence, you know, we've been, as tech leaders, been planning for this for years and years and years. Disaster recovery, business continuity plans. You know, we've been harping on, you know, finance's doors to invest in things like this. And for this real reason, that, you know, when it happens and the wheels fall off, we have to be able to react, which, you know, at Mobica we have done, and in lots of other organizations they have done. But the key now is enabling that as your plan B is now your plan A. So we are now working in a business continuity environment. So what is our new business continuity environment? So it's just trying to think about what's next, because everything's just so uncertain at the minute. You know, guidance is changing on a daily basis. Businesses can't stop. We still need to innovate. We still need to drive. So it's just being ahead of that curve.
Tony, are you guys crushing it right now? You must be.
We're crushing it. I would say we're pounding it. So, you know, we're getting there. You know, we've got a business full of developers, you know, who drive innovation. You know, Dave was talking about stealth IT. If I was to talk about stealth IT years ago, you know, we'd try and close it down. Now we want it, because that helps drive what we do. You know, I've been in this game long enough to remember when we were the IT police, and we used to give you, you know, an 8-ton laptop that ran Windows 95 and didn't do anything unless we told you to do it. Now, the business and our customers are driving what we do. So it's critically important that we keep, you know, on the curve of that as well.
Is it the most exciting, best time ever in our industry?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and tech leaders moving more into business, you know, this is a natural sort of springboard for a lot of technology leaders now, because we are ensuring that those business lights stay on. It's a great time to be doing what we're doing, an exciting time as well, because it's constantly changing.
Excellent. Tony, stay with us. We'll circle back to you. Great to see you again as well.
You too,
hey,
mate.
Next up, Alison McKinna. Alison is the Non-Executive Director, Change and Transformation Consultant and Operations Director. That's a mouthful. Alison, great to see you.
Hi, Hunter. Thank you very much. I'm a non-exec for a number of different organisations, and I've seen them through the pandemic and seen how they've reacted. But today I was particularly going to talk about the hospital, where I'm a member of the board and non-exec, if that would be appropriate for you.
Love it. Please tell us, as hospitals had to really go to the whole digital, you know, medical health scenario, what were you thinking? What were you driving? And it's clearly an innovation agenda, right? Absolutely
an innovation agenda. And I think in healthcare, it was very easy to initiate change because the emotional connection was to saving lives. And so the communication of the message was really easy of, in order to save lives, we need to change our operation, we need to change our tech, we need to change our staffing, we need to change the relationship with our patients. So the energy for innovation was absolutely there. and lots of conversations and control from government about what the hospital needed to do, but also lots of innovation in individual wards on how they supported patients and how they supported their staff. One of the key things that I quote to people was, you know, we moved 1,500 people home working. So anyone who wasn't a frontline healthcare person was moved home working within 2 weeks. And then we reconfigured all of the staffing, all of the physical location of care, which meant that all the tech had to move around as well. So that's something that people forget. The tech needs to follow the care and the patient. But again, another interesting statistic for the audience is around outpatient appointments. We've been trying to drive innovation in outpatients and virtual consultations for a long time. And within a couple of weeks, we've gone from 4% outpatient appointments by virtual means to 86%. So I've used this quote before, but the gates of avoidance were very firmly closed. You know, the objections that people could come up with to not do things were immediately put to one side because people were so concentrated on COVID. So it's been a real pivot point for the hospital. In the early days, it's quite easy because you say, concentrate on COVID, don't do anything else. We're now in the restoration and recovery phase where we're trying to carry on other areas of healthcare and still be prepared for the second wave of COVID. So it's actually harder at the moment to direct what the tech needs are than it was in the early days, because the early days you could be very focused on what you wanted.
Alison, great story. We'll circle back to you. Thanks so much for coming on the program. Really well said. Hey, next up, Morel Stuart was the former CIO at Heathrow Airport. I know that airport. I've been there through that airport. That is one of the busiest airports in the world, right, Stuart? We all know that.
It is. Or at least it was. Yeah, I think it was number 5 officially in the world rankings, but certainly on the international, it was the second busiest on international flights. So yes, very intense.
Times, right? What's on your mind right now when you think about this pandemic and you think about, you know, being ready to embrace change and how to lead in a pandemic?
Well, I think partly I have a bit of guilt because I've not been working through most of the summer. So listening to all you guys dealing with COVID, etc., I've had time in the garden and on my bike. So, but in terms of, we've been in crisis before, and certainly at an airport, you live through crises all the time. And it comes down to the things that largely we've already been talking about. It's about leadership. It's about setting out the style that you want your organization to operate in. You are part of the leadership team. It's not part of the business or part of IT. You are running the business. And there's one of the things that my boss at Heathrow was very clear on the day I started. 50% of my job was running IT. The other 50% was running Heathrow Airport. And I think if you bear that in mind, everything you do, and it's a bit like David was talking about the shadow IT. It's not shadow IT, it's a virtual IT team. And if you think about every person in the organization is part of your IT organization, a part of your IT team and technology advocates, then you can start leading them. And it's just like any, whether in your direct team or not, they need help, they need coaching, they need training, they need change management, they need permission. They need permission to go and change, and they need permission to implement change rather than doing it covertly. They've always hidden it under the table because they always used to get bollocked by us because we were the IT police. Now we want to encourage them. So you have to give them very overt permission and support. And when you do that, they come out the woodwork, and the amount of collaboration and support they give each other is absolutely phenomenal. And so it really is stepping back and changing our mindset as leaders, and particularly technology leaders, where it has always been about compliance, it's been about risk, it's been about security. And it's never about leading people who are not experts in our field. And how do we help them? How do we encourage them? How do we bring this forward, particularly in this pandemic world, where everything is remote? And that is really tough, but it comes down to our mindset first and giving these people permission and support to go and change the small things first and the small bits in their own business, in their own processes, make their lives a little bit easier, change how they're doing things now they're working at home. Do it themselves, not ask permission. So they're looking for us for that leadership and that support. And great companies are doing that. And I think that's going to make the huge difference as we go through this and come out the other end as a different mindset in us as leaders.
Hey, Stuart, that was really brilliant. And by the way, because you're out of the loop, if you will, for now, not for long, that's really clear, precise insight. I love it. Talk to us a little bit about leading in a crisis, how to prepare when the crisis hits. What's the checklist? 1, 2, 3 things that you go to. You obviously have been trained in this space in your former scenario.
The first thing is what is your objectives? And whenever we have a crisis, and we used to rehearse crises at the airport, then we had quite a few real ones there as well. There was no dress rehearsal, it was straight in at the deep end. And the first thing you do is you don't start running around. People look to leaders for calm. They look for direction. So what's your objectives? What is in the next hour, what is it that you're trying to do? And it's usually safety. Where are your people? Are they safe? Are the planes safe? What's the big risks around? And then it's a case of, right, what is the likely risk in an hour? So that very first thing you're looking at is the safety of your people. Then it's a case of, right, how do we keep your operation flowing? What's important? What's the critical thing that you really need to worry about? And every business is different. At Heathrow, it was planes. You had to keep the planes moving on the runway. Whether there was passengers in them or bags in them, they could wait. The planes had to keep moving because there's not enough runways in the world to ground all the planes. So you have to keep moving. And we were close a few times to gridlock because of that. So you have a hierarchy and you work that through and you have to practice. Every couple of months, we would have a rehearsal on decision making, and it's corporate-wide decision making. So it's not just as a leader. Who are your comms people? Who's your HR? Where are your people? How do you communicate with your team? If they're all at home and your email's gone down, how do you communicate? Now, you have to think through scenarios and practice, document it and practice, and that's about your business resilience.
Brilliant. Really well said. Thank you, Stuart, for coming on. We'll circle back to you in just a minute. Next up, Kevin Haskew. Kevin's been a long supporter and friend of the HMG platform and network, spoken with us at the London summits in the past. He's a senior vice president and CIO of On Semiconductor, a global enterprise. Kevin, great to see you.
Hey, Hunter, how are you doing?
Excellent. Now, where are you coming in from today?
I'm actually in the Midlands in England.
Excellent. Little background. Where's home?
Phoenix, Arizona, but I also have a house in England as well.
Excellent. What's on your mind with this whole global crisis we've been going through, and what kind of innovation or transformation agenda have you been able to drive at On Semi during this very challenging time?
I think we're in that phase now, Hunter, where the reality is sinking in that this is more a marathon than a sprint. And we've certainly gone through the first phase where we were euphoric that we got through it. But now there's a recalibration of that. This is going to take longer than we think, and we actually need to, reinvent, reimagine, not just IT, but the workforce and the company as well. So I think the company really is actually looking at what we actually need to do differently. And the big thing for us is around design of our products, where we've actually basically sent 3,000 design engineers home, and we now have them working remotely. And it's how do we go through the next innovation cycle with all these guys and girls working from home in about 80 different geographic locations. And we haven't quite solved that one, to be honest. The challenge for us is we've got a mixture today, where we sent, say, 12,000 people home, and we have to now facilitate people working remotely. But the reality is we're a manufacturing company. We manufacture and sell 75 billion products a year. So we still, through this crisis, have to have 22,000 people in factories, and we need to keep the factories operational even though there's lockdowns. And that's, to be honest, that's been just as hard as trying to facilitate people working from home.
Makes sense. What a challenge. What does innovation mean to you and your team now?
It means different things for different people. And so we're having to break it up into certain areas. A couple of areas of focus for us. One is, I've just mentioned, innovation around engineering. But the two areas that we're really looking at is, one is around sales. We've got to go for, we want more growth, and we want to increase some of our margins as well. So we've got a couple of neat projects going on with the sales guys, using some machine learning tools that we're working on. And so the two areas there really would be around solution selling. And that's basically where we're actually looking at competitive products and trying to get more of our components onto a reference design kit. And then the second one would be that the holy grail is, so we call it dynamic pricing curves. And then, basically based on moving demand, that can shift pricing instantaneously as well. If we could make some progress in those two areas in the next 12 months, that could be a real game changer for us. So the organization's, really focused on that. And then the other is then with our complex global supply chain. It's what can we do to really, somehow try to simplify, streamline, make that more, continue to make it more efficient and operationally efficient. So sales will drive the top line, and the supply chain will try and, drive the bottom line.
Kevin, you've been a great friend and ally for years with the HMG platform and network, and you've had an amazing career. Just like a minute on, what do you credit your success in our industry to over the 30 years?
Yeah, I'm too old for all this stuff now. You need to just put me out and retire me off to the farm. It's interesting listening to the conversation. I nod when I listen to everybody speaking that, this is exciting times. But a lot of the things we're dealing with today, we were dealing with 30 years ago. It's just slightly, it's different now because maybe it's all digital and it's just faster. But, what change management we were talking about 30 years ago, shadow IT we were talking about 20 years ago. So I think it's nice for me to have been through all of this from the start as a reference point. I'm just fascinated now that how complex it is today. And I think it's because of the variety of I'll call it tools and techniques, and then the speed. And because it is that classic democratization of IT. Everybody's tech savvy, everybody wants it. And so that is our challenge. So I actually think IT is really at the point where we need to redefine ourselves. What is our value proposition? Because we're not going to be the IT experts. Everybody is. And so what is our offering to the organization? And that's the conversation I have with our CEO, because I think that's the only thing that's going to keep us in a job.
I'm convinced, thank you, Kevin, that leadership, leading courageously, passionately, authentically is the key in any crisis, and more so than ever. What's the one leadership piece that you learned about yourself and your team in this crisis?
I think it's credibility, which we've earned, previously, but you have to work with facts. You have to work with facts and first principles, and then you've got to trust people. And without that, you're not going to survive.
Hey, Kevin, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much, and I appreciate your friendship for all these years.
Yeah, no problems.
We're going to circle back to Tony Healy. Tony, same question. What leadership item did you learn about yourself, your team, your organization, your industry that you want to share with with our summit today?
I agree with what Karen's been saying. It's as IT leaders, we're used to, most of us will be used to working in crisis. So we've all been there. When data centers have had issues, security issues, network stack failures, that type of thing. So it's keeping that calm head. But again, it's trust and empowerment in your team. We have people working for us that are good at what they do, and it's making sure they get the recognition for that. It's having the ability to give them a voice as well. So they are at the forefront of most businesses now because they are keeping those businesses running. So if anything, it's, recognizing that talent, giving it a voice, and ensuring that once this recovers, and when whatever recovery looks like, that those people who have been able to take a step up continue to be there. What we don't want is, this crisis to spurn lots of good leaders and lots of fantastic people, and then it's all forgotten when, everyone tries to get back to how it used to be. You know, humility is a very, very key thing in this, and it's, you know, recognizing when things go right, it's recognizing when things go wrong, but just honesty and integrity.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Tony. Great to see you. And I hope to see you in person soon, maybe next year.
Absolutely.
Closing comments about leading in a crisis?
I think for me, as a non-exec, it's about being that C-suite leader where the board, I'm the most tech-savvy person on my board, so they all look at me for the assurance for the board. So it's knowing enough about how the organisation's working and doing that you can give that assurance, but at the same time not getting in the way, and letting people be empowered and do their job. I think the thing that I see happening over the next few years is it's hard enough doing change within your own organisation, but when you're trying to operate multi-organisations all moving and shifting, for me, the key skill that we're going to need is collaboration, and that ability to not always look inward, but to continually look outward for partnerships or what other people are doing or how we can partner with people to generate that innovation. And I think that's going to be one of the key skills for boards and for the C-suite tech leaders. Really well said,
Alison. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then Stuart, final comment on leading in this crisis. Is it the best time ever to be a tech leader?
It absolutely is. There is so much going on. There's so much demand for our time, and the expectation is on us to lead. It's not just to lead the tech. It's leading change, leading the business, leading your company and your business and the people and your teams through the change, giving them permission, giving them support, giving them recognition, taking them with you in a direction which is suitably vague. we don't know where it's all going, but by God, it's a great time to be doing that.
Excellent, Stuart. Thanks for coming on the program today. Kevin, Tony, Alison, brilliant job. Really nailed it. Great job. Thanks so much. Stay with us. We have Jamie Peacock at the very end doing a really cool talk on leadership. You won't want to miss that. But next up, we're going to kick it up. We're going to move to Graham, and Graham's going to lead a panel on commitment to diversity and inclusion and kick it up a level. Graham, over to you.
Thanks, Hunter. Thanks, everybody. Great conversation so far. So I'm grabbing that button. The panel I'm facilitating is commitment to diversity and inclusion. It's such an important topic that I think we could do a whole summit on it. But as we only have 20 minutes, I'm going to hand over really to. So we've got 3 questions we're going to voice. I'd like to introduce you to our 3 panel members because it's really about what they have to share as opposed to me. So if I could first ask Avril Chester, could you give yourself a quick introduction, please?
Hi everybody, I'm Avril Chester. I'm founder and CEO of Cancer Central and also interim executive director at the Royal Institute of British Architects.
Thanks, Av. Welcome. Second up, Dylan Roberts. Dylan, could you give a quick intro?
Certainly, yeah. Hi, my name's Dylan Roberts. I'm the newly appointed Chief Digital and Information Officer for York and Scarborough NHS Foundation Trust. And I originally got on this programme when I was CDIO for the City of Leeds.
Brilliant, thanks and welcome, Dylan. And last but not least, thank you, Britton. Ez, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi everybody, I'm Ez. I'm founding member, principal and CTO in residence for ImpactX Capital, the venture capital fund investing in underrepresented entrepreneurs across the UK and Europe. I'm also the co-founder of Code Untapped, Digital Skills Accelerator. It's all around innovation through diversity and exposing organizations who are trying to build diversity within their technology teams.
Brilliant. If you want to stay in the speaking slot, Ez, so we've got 3 questions. The questions we're going to cover is, can you tell us why this is important? What should we be doing as IT and business leaders? And the panel is going to share some examples of how they've done it and what they're seeing from it. So, Ez, would you be happy to go first with, can you tell us why this is important? Why is diversity and inclusion important as we speak?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, diversity and inclusion important for 2 key reasons. One is around society as a whole. And the other is, why is it important to our businesses? We're all here as C-suite leaders, executives, trying to understand why. I know D&I is important. I know being more inclusive is important, but why? How do I justify it? Ultimately, from our perspective, ability is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't. What this is all about is making sure that everyone in our society gets the opportunity to fully participate, and that they have the freedom to fail as well as the freedom to succeed, okay? Once we have that, what we start to see is that society becomes more equitable. We see that people from other backgrounds who don't necessarily look like us start to be able to achieve things that they haven't done historically. And what we generally see is we actually see an uptick and an uplifting of general progress, general success, and innovation and relevancy overall. Which then brings me to the next side of this equation, which is, why is it important for the companies, right? We can talk around why is it good for society. So to me, it comes down to 4 points: innovation, relevancy, access to talent, and talent retention. So from an innovation perspective, it's all about having people from different backgrounds bringing different ideas and experiences to the table. We often talk around, you know, I need people to think outside the box. But how's that possible if everyone on your team is inside the box and it's usually the same box? We talk about relevancy, but if your company doesn't represent the customer, how can they truly understand the problems that those customers have? In the fintech space, we'd often talk about supporting people with financial exclusion, right? Improving financial inclusion. But how can you understand the problem of financial exclusion if you've never actually been financially excluded? We then talk around access to talent. Talent knows no borders, right? Talent is global. Going back to my earlier point, ability is equally distributed. The problem is that hiring and building teams is hard. So I'm not sat here saying that people are institutionally racist or a systemic racism. What I'm saying is that hiring people and building teams and taking that risk is a very difficult thing for people to do. So rather than expand their pool of talent, they tend to shrink it. Because what they do is they look at, well, we all do it. We think to ourselves, what's good look like? Well, I look good. When I say I look good, I mean my experience, my CV, the things that I've done look good. And in a homogeneous society, where actually something around the lines of 86% of the UK is white, what you're going to find is people who have a very similar background to you will look a lot like you. As I said, talent knows no borders, so let's expand those and find the best people instead of restricting that pool. Then finally, it comes down to talent retention. There's no point in being able to access these people if you can't get them to stick around in your company. There is nothing worse than coming into an organization and being the only person who looks like you. I often say it's not about more people in the company looking like me. It's that no one looks like each other. It's that what we have is an organization where everyone is different, everyone is respected, everyone brings something to the table. We talk about diversity and inclusion, but they're two things. It's almost diversity versus inclusion. Diversity is a statistic, it's a metric, it's a number. Inclusion is a sense of feeling, it's a sense of belonging. And you need to get both right to be able to solve your innovation and relevancy problems. Now, if those 4 things aren't important to your business, I'd love to see your business model. Is that good enough, Graham?
Great way to get us started. Thanks, Ez. So, brilliant, some great points. Get us started. Dylan, anything to add on to what Ez has said from the why is diversity and inclusion important?
Yeah, I mean, I guess certainly I think Ez has covered most of the key points there, really, around in particular how that diverse and inclusive workshop can actually give you a competitive advantage. But I guess from the public sector perspective, I think it's really imperative that whether or not it's working for a local authority or in the NHS, that we have to, in order to be able to understand our customer set in the public sector, we have to be representative of those. So if we're really going to recognise and understand how to deal with a mix of cultures, or in the health perspective, the root cause of some health inequalities, with the necessary understanding that we need to make some progress there, it's really important that we have, as eloquently put, an equally diverse and inclusive workforce who understand that directly and those experiences. So from the public sector perspective, it's more important than ever, because we need to be representative of the people we serve.
Brilliant, thanks, Dylan. Some great points, and some great praise coming in the chat as well. Just to remind everybody, the chat function is there if you'd like to share any questions, comment, debates. Avril, same question. Anything to add on to Ez and Dylan getting us kicked off so well? Why is diversity and inclusion important?
Well, it's been so beautifully well put. So really what I'm going to add to the party is a bit of a story, and a story to sort of showcase the impact of diversity and inclusion in everything from the early stage design to how we are as an organisation. So for those that don't know Cancer Central, to date we've been purely built through pro bono and CSR. We've had over 40,000 donated hours by over 250 individuals and 35 organisations. When we started, we've had many hackathons, but we had a hackathon, and the concept and an idea that came from it was about having a conversational search, because we're here to connect people to those brilliant services and businesses out there and the information to support those affected by cancer. So they were saying, look, let's do a conversational search. So I'm going to fast forward a bit. Obviously, you can tell there's a bit to the journey. We developed our first chatbot, Ask Av. She was in diapers, but we're really keen. We're growing. We've had lots of people involved in growing her and looking at it and training her. Actually, at the beginning of the year, we were looking at how do we grow, how do we re-platform, and then lockdown happened in COVID-19. We were asked, I had a board member approach me and said, hey, is there anything you can do to support NHS Scotland 111 calls? Across the whole NHS network, they're being swamped. So we said, of course, went to our CSR partners and said, hey, we were building it over here. Could we potentially use it here? And we spanned this out. We basically went through a soft launch on the NHS Scotland Inform website. And to date, we've answered over 110,000 messages on COVID-19. So the reason why I'm sharing this story is there were multiple touch points by lots and lots of different people, from the early idea, the concept, the build, the new design, everything else going in, to it now actually supporting people in the current pandemic. But what's been the most incredible finding we've had is the analytics behind it in sharing that NHS Scotland are reaching a broader audience than they have done in the past. So by having that inclusion of different people across the whole sort of side of this journey means we're reaching even more people for the NHS at the moment. So I just wanted to share that sort of good story of how this can actually impact and actually have even more of a bigger impact than you ever imagined.
Brilliant, thanks, Av. So I'm just looking at the time. We'll probably combine questions 2 and 3. So what should we be doing, and does that link into any examples of how you've done it? Av, I think you might have touched on that, so we'll circle back round to you. Ez, do you want to pick up that one first?
Sure. I mean, this is always the big question, right? You get a lot of people who say, look, I recognize the problem, okay, I understand that we need to fix it, and I want to fix it, but how do I go about doing it? And this is always the question. And again, I think what's great at the moment is there is a real desire to do something about this problem now. It's not so much of a tick box exercise, it really is. We're seeing organizations reaching out to us in both Code Untapped and ImpactX, asking, like, how can we help? Now, I think what it comes down to is a few key things. We need to see more representation at every level in the companies that we have, not just creating a new black D&I officer, right? That's not good enough. We need to see more representation at the board level, the senior manager level, middle management, junior level. But then we get asked the question, and someone raised it in the channel, if we always want to hire experienced people, what does that do? How do we ensure that we stay representative? Well, firstly, that makes the assumption that there aren't people from underrepresented backgrounds at the experience levels. They are there, right? My company, ImpactX, has a pipeline of over 800 founders, which we found in the last 18 months. Code Untapped has had no trouble finding senior developers at all. But it's about your network. It's about what you look for. And this is one of the key things I find. When we're recruiting, we do tend to be quite lazy. And this comes back to that whole issue about, what does good look like? Most of the people who recruit, my girlfriend works as a HR manager, and she's always complaining about this. But most of our senior managers involved in recruitment have no idea how to recruit. They don't know how to interview. They don't know how to put together a job spec. They don't even know what the job really is. They just know what they did when they were in that role, or what someone else is telling them what they need. So what happens is you get copy and paste on job specifications that tend to have language that are off-putting to certain demographics. We also need to see anonymized CVs. I know this is a thing that people don't like, but what I'd love to see is more anonymous CVs in the system, but as well as having the anonymous CVs, also track progress of applicants through your interview process. The one thing we're all technologists. How do we solve a problem? We find data, right? We get data around the issue, and then we use that to solve the problem. But if I ask most of the people on this channel about the data around their recruitment pipeline, around underrepresented people, whether they're Black, Asian, whether they're male, female, whether they're LGBTQ+, I guarantee you most of the people in here wouldn't be able to give me any data about that whatsoever, right? This is a big problem. So we need to be collecting that data, but then we need to see how do they progress through the journey? How far do they get? Which managers continuously block progress for some of these individuals? And until we start to collect that level of information, it's just going to be very, very difficult to solve this problem. And then finally, it's about exposure, but not just exposure from your organization, but exposure from your key hiring individuals, right? They need to be out in the community, working with other organizations like Code Untapped and many others, YSYS, 10x10, Color in Tech, UK Black Tech. I'm sure Avril can name a whole bunch of fantastic organizations, and so can Dylan. But if we get our senior leaders out there working with these organizations, what happens is they become exposed to more individuals. They start to understand the idiosyncrasies of people from different backgrounds. Classic one is the whole idea that Black people tend to be louder and more aggressive, right? But then if they stay quiet, well, they're not putting their voice forward, right? They can't win. So what you need is more understanding of these individuals, of these groups, of these demographics. And the only way to do that is to get your senior leaders out into society, out working with these organizations, out mentoring the community. And that also solves part of the other issue around the network for these individuals, which gives them the exposure they need to these types of organizations.
Brilliant, thanks, Ez. Dylan, anything to layer on to Ez, and then we'll hand back to Avril for the final word.
Yeah, I mean, just to layer onto that, I'd agree with all of that. And just to reiterate, this gives a competitive advantage. So it helps with the bottom line, whether you're in the public sector or, in my opinion, in the private sector as well. But what I thought I'd do is just give a couple of practical examples of things that are implemented. And I guess the public sector are more ahead of the curve on this, in my view. Practical things that have been implemented and have shown success. So from a recruiting perspective, it's going out and actively encouraging people from a diverse range of backgrounds to apply. That means advertising potentially in some of the minority presses. I don't know, Asian Express newspaper, some of the LGBTQ publications. It's things like graduate programs, you picked up on it before. So Leeds City Council, from a digital and information perspective, target Leeds City College, not necessarily the University of Leeds or Leeds Beckett, Leeds City College, to bring a set of apprentices in to learn from the bottom up and develop them through the system. So it's actively targeting. And I think that just to back what Ez has been saying, really, is that bear in mind, be aware of yourselves as well, your unconscious bias. And I hold my hands up to this as well. You know, we have all got our own unconscious bias. If there's 100 people going for something, and there's 20 that are in underrepresented groups, there's 100 people there that are likely to be qualified. So take, you know, proactively and actively, positively discriminate, recruit the person who is qualified, and look at alternative ways in which you can assess performance after recruitment if that's necessary. So it's taking those practical steps, and they're all things within Leeds City Council and some of the staff networks that exist in the York Foundation Trust are things that are active and working, and they do work, and they, just to reiterate it again, it improves the quality of the solutions that you are delivering, especially in this sector. So I'll just end it there, sorry.
Brilliant, thank you, Dylan. Av, just finally, just to close us off before we hand on the baton.
No problem at all. And I'm going to put my counter centre hat off and put my RIBA hat on in my role as CIO. It is obviously applicable across everything, but there's something that I wish to share with you. Isn't technology brilliant? Working in technology is fantastic. You constantly learn, there's constantly things changing, but there's something, and the reason why I say this that I want to mention. Technology is full of diverse skill sets. We need to analyze, we need to problem solve, there's designing, there's user experience, we need to understand data, we need to organize and coordinate. I mean, I'm just briefly mentioning a few, particularly some of the new technologies that are coming out. We need some of the linguistic support. You know, it's not all necessarily about understanding the mathematics behind that, of which there are absolutely roles that suit that. So what I really want to sort of end this on is really an encouragement that we have a gift in the industry that we work in, a gift that the roles we need, the diverse skills we need, needs different people. So what are we waiting for?
It's a brilliant way to finish. Thanks, thanks Ez, thanks Dylan, thanks Av for being on my panel. Quite a few of you have said in the chat, most latterly, Valeria, such a critical topic. We should have further discussions on this in future meetings. So sorry we've run over, but I'm hoping we're able to do that. I think, as I said in my introduction, we could have a whole summit just on diversity and inclusion and the great things our panel has talked us to. So thank you for that. I'm going to hand over now the baton to friend and colleague Bill Limond. Bill himself a former CIO, and he has some of our top CIO and CTOs who've been across the FTSE. He's going to be covering your career. Can COVID-19 accelerate your route to the board? Bill, over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Graham. And it's been a very interesting conference so far, I must say, and quite varied. And really dealing with the people problems. And of course, one of the biggest people problems is ourselves and our careers. And I'm very privileged to have a very distinguished panel. And I wondered if I could just ask, I don't see you all there, but Mayank, I don't know, are you there? If you could just say a few words about yourself. So we've got Mayank Prakash, who's from the Tilney group. Mayank?
Thanks, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Mayank Prakash, and I'm the Group CTO of Tilney Group, UK's third largest wealth manager. We've just doubled our AUM last month, and our plan is to double again and go public. So it's exciting to grow in a competitive marketplace, is with wealth management catching up with the rest of fintech. Personally, I'm a curious person. I'm a designer. I like trekking, and hopefully that gives you a few hooks to catch up offline.
Thanks very much. Kevin, I don't know, Kevin Seeley, I think I saw you just a little while ago. Is Kevin there?
Kevin's on mute. Oh.
Kevin? No?
Ah, yeah. No, you unmuted, but we still can't hear you, Kevin. Sorry.
Maybe we want to go to Phil Jordan, Bill? I can see Phil's
yeah.
in the
Sven,
list.
I think you're there. And, sure. If you just introduce yourself and just say a few words.
No, with pleasure. So I won't introduce Kevin, but I can speak for both of us. We are the headhunters on this panel. Kevin representing a formidable firm in the sector, and I, for my sins, work for Egon Zender, where I've spent the last 10 years in the CIO function. So I've done a lot of work. I have a lot of passion and have done a lot of work in the sort of around that topic of leadership in tech. And I now lead our practice group globally, which is just a sheep herding job, but it's a lot of fun. So glad to be here. And I'm really pleased that I could attract a good friend, Phil, here as well. So Phil, maybe next.
Yeah, hi everybody, hi Sven. Yeah, Phil Jordan, I'm Group CIO of Sainsbury's in the UK. So unlike my uncle, I work in a highly competitive market with absolutely no growth whatsoever. So I'm also a non-executive director for TalkTalk in the telecom sector. So I have an exec and a non-exec role, obviously IT, technology related in my exec career.
Thanks very much, Phil.
Hi Bill, Kevin here, can you hear me?
Kevin, great.
Great. I went out and came back in and the microphone's kicked back into life, so sorry about that. Yeah, hi, Kevin Seeley. So I work for Korn Ferry, the leadership consulting and executive search firm. So I've spent my whole career in IT, initially in an IT department, then as a consultant for many years. And for the last 15, I've been in Korn Ferry, where I lead the technology officers search practice. So placing CIOs and CTOs is my day job.
And I think this is one of the USPs of this conference, actually, to have people like yourself and Sven talking to us and advising us. I think that's fantastic. One of the things in the title is that COVID-19 is accelerating things. And certainly from what I've seen, that's the case. And I think, Phil, you put it rather nicely, that we have become rather front and central to a lot of the things that are going on. Personally, I've just been in Ireland for a couple of years and looking after An Garda Síochána, which is the police and national security force. And of course, we've come right to the fore and central and having to accelerate a lot of the things which were being held back a lot in the past. But I think the interesting thing which came up in the conversations we had before this meeting were really from Kevin and Sven. Kevin and Sven, I wonder if you'd like to sort of expand on that. And that is that one of the stepping stones, or one of the important stepping stones that you see for a CIO getting to the board is actually a non-executive directorship. And I wonder if you could expand on that.
Shall I kick off a little and then Sven, you can pick up? Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, Bill. You know, we've talked a lot and there's been a lot of talk on this conference about how CIOs, you know, the role is so strategic, so at the heart of business these days. And I think, you know, we've got great examples in Phil and Mayank here of guys who have, you know, sat on the boards of companies in different sectors, been highly strategic, highly commercial in their roles, and both now are operating also as non-exec directors. And I guess the point is, you know, what about the CIO as an NED? You know, is this something that's on the rise? And the answer is yes, it is. We are seeing companies and organizations more and more wanting some form of technology knowledge and representation on the main board. So where financial and experience or chief executive experience has been, you know, obviously very prevalent and still is, there is an increasing demand for technologists to take up those sort of roles. Yet it's still a very competitive market. And what do CIOs need to think about if they want to be a board leader? And I guess just to kick it off, the one thing I would say, this is a very different role. If you are thinking about being an NED, it is very different from an exec role. And I think as CIOs, we're all very focused on delivery and operating and getting things done. An NED is somebody who has to be more independent. You have to be able to step back from the situation and take a lot more of the world view in. You have to be able to challenge and advise the executives on the board. So I think the first step is very much about thinking about your style and how you might adapt to such a role, quite aside from how you get into an NED position in the first place, and I'm sure we will come to that in a second. But, you know, what are the other things you could do? You can talk to people like Phil, like Mayank, who have been NEDs. What did they do? How do they find it different? And also, what about observing your own board in action? You know, CIOs often get the opportunity to present to the main board. You know, if you get the chance to sit in on part of those board meetings, see how things operate, and get some experience that's very different from your own exec experience. I'll just stop there. Sven, do you want to sort of pick up the baton?
Sure. Well, you've stolen all my thunder. Someone's not on mute, I think. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. So the single biggest thing that I encounter in the CIO world, and for which I would say is this is hiring the tech leader onto an executive committee, is the question the client would ask, and this could be the CFO, the CEO, the board, say, is he or she just, you know, do they have the gravitas, and can they look at peer level? Can they operate at peer level at the executive level? Because there are always 2 or 3 people who could easily be the CEO, and they are financially literate commercial people. But in tech, it's still, I would say, overall a sort of a talent development issue that is being talked about a lot, and every candidate is vetted against this criterion that is so elusive. What is gravitas? What is being a peer level person? How do I ask questions that open up the issues? And how can I suspend my expertise on which I grew up throughout my career? I was asked to know the answer. How can I suspend that and suddenly be at peer level and say, I don't know. Let's have the discussion. Let's open it up. And so if that problem is at exec level, we also have it at board level. So it's a bit of a double whammy, I think. And I think that's why and I'm a big advocate of getting tech on board. So I've been knocking on that door for ages. And my frustrating experience has been that boards would say, bring us the best tech talent you have. And then you present that tech talent, and none of them have board experience. And they say, well, they're great at tech, but they don't have board experience. It's a real chicken and egg thing. And so how do we break through that? My biggest advice is not to look at this as a search for the board role and look at the market in terms of who's out there who can give me a job. The way I would look at it is to say, how can I have board level conversations? Because I need to find myself in a conversation with board members where it's not about me, it's not about my expertise, it's about our mutual curiosity about where technology sits on the agenda. And how do you discuss tech on the board? Oh, isn't that interesting? And if you have found yourself in numerous of those board level conversations, at some point you learn a lot about how tech is discussed on the board, and that becomes a real currency in the 6th or 7th discussion you have. So it's a bit of a, maybe it's too sort of commonsensical what I say, but I think it's very much about become a student of the boardroom, become really interested in what's happening there, and suspend this agenda of wanting something from the boardroom, as in, where is the job? I stop here, I have more to say, but just for now, for starters.
Sven, I think you mentioned that rather lovely comment, which is the way your tech expertise like you, or was that you, Kevin? I thought that was rather good, that, you know, just watch how you come over in a technical sense in the board meetings.
I think that's right. I think there is a sort of, there's 2 sides to it. I think the first point is, you know, a board is recruiting you know, for your technical expertise and potentially for something quite specifically. It might be a merger, you know, an acquisition, it could be cyber, it could be, you know, a transformation agenda. There's probably something quite specific in your experience that they're after. But at the same time, they want somebody who's much broader and who's going to talk in a business language and is going to challenge and engage in other topics. So think about your sector experience, your international experience. experience, your transactions, M&A experience, you know, your experience in scaling up a company. Those are all critical elements that you have to be able to show. And I'm sure, you know, Phil and Mike, I'm sure, will be able to comment from real experience.
I would love to, yes. Mike, would you like to give us an idea of how you see the role, how it's different, and how it's helped you? Because you're with Uber, aren't you?
That's right. So I'm currently also on the board of Uber, because it's a modern digital platform that's at scale, operating internationally. But I found myself nodding as I was listening to Kevin and Sven. And first of all, a NED role is a different role from being an executive. And I find it quite complementary to being an executive. It is not about executing the business plan, which is what we do as executives. I find it all about offering perspective, asking insightful questions, and supporting the executive team in tough times. And there is clearly a board governance aspect to it, particularly in the world of security, looking at risks that the organization has from the perspective of cybersecurity. And there's also the reassurance that the board has to provide to the regulators. Now, those are all things that are quite complementary to what I do as an executive and what we all do as CIOs. And that was a new experience for me. And I went about training myself in that word by first watching board members, watching the good ones and just learning by observing, because the good ones didn't spend the entire board meeting talking, but asked that one insightful question, which made the executives sit up and think and reflect. So that really helped me. The other thing that helped me was working on subsidiary boards or regulatory legal entity boards, because you learn fiduciary legal responsibilities and what that means on subsidiary boards. They're great training grounds, and most of us have those. And so they are great training grounds. And then start somewhere. So it may be a charity, it may be a arm's length body, government body. Start somewhere. It may be an NHS trust. Start somewhere so that you get the learning experience, and then scale up from there. As a business leader, I think the good thing now is that boards are not just looking for CEOs and CFOs as non-execs. They are looking for digital talent. But as Sven and Kevin were saying, they're looking for digital leaders who are business leaders first. So those would be my experiences. Let me stop here, though.
Thanks very much. And Phil, you're right in the middle of all this with Brexit and COVID. This really is a business that is at the forefront, I think. I'm sure there are lots of lessons where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with Mike. I think this is a role for a business leader who happens to have technology as their portfolio. I think most boards are wrestling with, particularly with COVID-19, are wrestling with, their online digital agenda. They're wrestling with security. They're wrestling with data, and they're wrestling with change. And of course, those things are very central to a technology executive's, being. So I think there's a real natural role, I think, to play on a board in the areas of change leadership and in the areas of preparing yourself, particularly at the moment, preparing yourself to deal with the challenges of sort of a post-COVID world. But to Matt's point, I think absolutely right. I think the role it's very different to being an exec. It's not an execution role. It's not there. Of course, there's an element of functional expertise that the board want to tap into. You spend a lot of time as a technology leader on a board explaining to the other board members what the technology guy is talking about, right? So there's a bit of translation involved as well. And I think that, that's why being an exec it really helps you, I think, because, being a technology exec, you spend a lot of time telling stories and explaining the opportunity and the value of technology to your own board. So actually being an NED is a very similar role, but I do think, the expectation is for you to contribute in all aspects and all facets of the business. I think that's where the fun and the growth is in it for all of us, right? Because it's, I sit in the audit committee and I sit on a security committee, and, you do a lot of watching and listening of others and how they challenge. And, yeah, so I really recommend it. I think it's a fantastic growth opportunity for all execs to go and spend time in another environment, another board with no executive responsibility. I think it makes you a much better exec actually when you come back to your business.
Thanks very much for that. I was struck by one comment earlier in the conference from Khalid Kark about that a board which has a tech-savvy person on it has, I think you said, a 25% share hike. Is that an observation that you would have seen?
I'll have a go. I've not seen that stat, Bill, but I'm amazed if a business hasn't worked out that it needs somebody with some tech savvy on the board. Incredible to think. You know, you think about the challenges businesses face at the moment, you know, massive acceleration of consumer trends to online, people dealing with remote working, people, you know, every business having a similar strategic element that is, you know, get to know your customers better than everybody else, using data to drive personalization. Well, you know, if a business doesn't have someone around the table who can really help and advise from a technology perspective, I suspect they're not going to be around for long, right? So I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's true, that stat. I haven't heard that.
Yes, I was struck by that stat earlier on. Maya, was there anything else you wanted to add? I think we've come to the end of our time slot here.
I think digitalization is both the biggest opportunity and an existential threat, irrespective of which sector you're in. And I think most boards recognize that they need a business leader who can help them navigate that journey. And that's a huge opportunity for us as CIOs to diversify our portfolios and look at different businesses and bring that learning back into our CIO roles as well. I find myself learning from the NED job and bring that back into the CIO job as well. And so I strongly recommend it.
Yeah, I take your point about having broad experience. I think that's extremely useful. Sven, was there anything else you would like to add to that?
Thanks, Bill. I liked Mayank's advice that start somewhere. So if back to the question of how to get going. So become a student of the boardroom. You will all have access to one board member or another, but start somewhere. It's about miles on the clock. And it's actually quite nice. So in recruitment processes, at a certain point, your executive career becomes less relevant and your board career becomes more important. So the client would ask, how is he or she on the board? And if that happens to be a charity, that's okay. So don't underestimate that. And I think the future belongs to CIOs on the board, definitely. I think the next 10 years will become very exciting on that level.
Thanks very much. Kevin, any further thoughts?
I would absolutely echo Sven's point. I think the number of main board positions for CIOs is still relatively limited. So therefore getting experience, whether it's a charity, a school governorship, a government advisory body, you know, professional bodies often have a lot of committees, housing associations, you know, there's all sorts of places that are crying out for people with technology experience. You can then get some of that experience, and when maybe a FTSE position or something more substantial does come up, you will be ahead of your colleagues who maybe have not invested time in those areas. So those are the places to look.
Well, many thanks, guys. Really interesting, and good luck to all of you in your careers.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. That's a great session. Thank you, Phil and Mayank, for joining us from the client side. Great to have your experience, and thank you to both Sven and Kevin joining us from the getting senior people into the client side. So that's really great. Thank you, gents. That was an awesome session. So for our final session before we have the closing session, we are blessed to have in the write-up that I've read from various people in the know in sport, he's described as one of the greatest rugby players of this generation. We're blessed and pleased to have Jamie Peacock, MBE, to finish up to talk to us about adaptive leadership in times of change. And for those that don't know, I'll let Jamie introduce himself better than I, but for those that don't know, Jamie's accolades include 8 years in captaincy of Great Britain and England, Jamie's one of a few sporting heroes to receive an MBE for his services, so obviously getting that from the Queen, and he's now a business mentor, including his sorry, someone's giving some feedback in the background, if they could go on mute. So without further ado, you've not come to hear me, Jamie Peacock MBE, are you with us?
Yes, I'm Graham. Thanks for that introduction, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Just as an outsider of your field, it's been really interesting listening to everybody's take on leadership this afternoon. What I'm going to talk about over the probably next 20 minutes is looking at leadership in uncertainty. And I think certainly within sport, we work in an uncertain environment all the time. Things change all the time. Strategies change dependent on results. And I think, as the great Mike Tyson said, we all have a plan until we get punched in the face. So what I'm going to do to do this best, I'm going to share my screen and do this via a presentation. So hopefully everybody can see that. And what I'm going to be talking about is leadership in uncertain times. To do that, I'm going to look at 4 different areas that I personally invested in while I was a captain of Great Britain, of England, and the couple of clubs I played at when we were dealing with uncertain times. And these areas, I believe, will allow you to flourish as a leader within this. And what I'm going to do for the talk, I'm going to take you through the 4 different areas. I'm going to show you how it's relevant still today for me, even though I'm out of sport. And then I'm going to weave it into why you should be using these as a leader now within your own businesses, and how it's relevant for you, even though it's nothing to do with sport. So the first thing for me, to show you how it's going to be relevant, in 10 days' time, I'm going to be committing to running an ultra marathon. I'm going to run an ultra marathon in 10 days, 55 kilometers across the South Downs, with 2,000 meters of ascent. And the reason why I'll be running that is the small fella on my left-hand side in that photo is a player I used to play alongside, Rob Burrows. Rob got diagnosed with MND at the end of last year. This photo was taken in January this year when we played in a game to raise money for him. He's only 37, had 3 kids. And at the moment now, because of the disease, he's now in a wheelchair now. For me to complete this ultramarathon, I'm going to have plenty of uncertainty, but I've been using the 4 aspects I'm going to talk about today to allow me to complete that in 10 days' time. Now, the 4 aspects I believe that you can use in uncertain times are these. I think you need to personally invest in positive influences, using self-development, stepping outside your comfort zone, and having a no-limits mindset. I believe this will allow me to accomplish an ultramarathon. It'll allow me to be successful as a leader within uncertain times in sport. And I think it'll allow you to do the same as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is positive influences. I think in our lives, we have 2 different types of people in and around our lives. We can have people who can be quite negative and want to pull us down and always question what we're doing. Or we can have the people who are quite positive on our mindset. And I believe in uncertain times, you need to listen to the right people. You need to listen to people who are going to be a positive influence on you. Now, I want to give an example of how we did this when I was captain of the Bradford Bulls in uncertain times, and we accomplished something nobody had ever done before in the history of the sport. The context of this story is that I signed for the Bradford Bulls in 1995. I made my debut for the first team in 1999. The next 5 seasons, we are the most successful club side in the country. We win the grand final twice, which is like winning the league. We win the Challenge Cup twice, like the FA Cup, and twice we win the World Club Challenge. We are the best club side in the world. Now, the beginning of the 2005 season, I get named captain of the Bulls for the first time. So 6 months into my first year captaining the Bulls, and we are having an awful time. Instead of being first or second in the league, we're 6 out of 12 sides in the table. We get knocked out of the Challenge Cup in an upset in the first round. And then it comes out in the papers, I'm going to make the move the following year from the Bradford Bulls to the Leeds Rhinos. Now that rivalry in Super League is a little bit like Man U and Man City. We then go play one of our main rivals, St Helens at home, 25,000 people watching us. We get a man sent off after 10 minutes. We then go get beat. Well, we get absolutely hammered. We get beat 64 points to 6. It's the biggest score that the Bulls have ever been beat by Saints in the 100-year history of the club. Now, what normally happens in rugby league when you get beat by that kind of scores. With 20 minutes to go, people go home, they'll think, I've seen enough of this rubbish, I'm not staying. Well, not that day. Out of the 25,000 people, I think 22,000 people stayed behind to boo us. The booing was louder than the cheering was at the start of the game. Now I'm walking off and all this negativity is around us with all the players, and you can tell it's all influencing our mindset. We get into the dressing room, I look around at the dressing room, look at my teammates, they're all sat down on the benches looking down on the floor. All this negativity is still coming in through the dressing room door, all this booing and jeering. We go home, spend Sunday at home, come back on Monday it's got worse for us. Local papers, back pages, worst bull side, history of Super League, can't win the grand final from here. All this negativity, again, influencing us. Now then, things got a little bit worse for me and more personal, because I got handed 2 fans letters by the press officer, and I'm going to read you the fans letters now. The first one I opened was this. Dear Jamie, I'm sending you this letter as I think you are scum. Do you honestly expect me to believe you're moving to Leeds for anything other than money? That's all that matters to people like you. Where is your loyalty? I think you and your family should move to a smaller house and have real wages like people in the real world. You're a poor leader deserting at a time like this. There's no way you can captain this team to win the trophy. I will boo you every opportunity I get. I also hope you get injured when you move to the Rhinos and that you have no success there. You don't deserve to wear the Bradford shirt. You should be stripped of the captaincy and not allowed to play anymore. I've also sent a letter to Brian Noble and the club, letting them know this too. So I think in my position, 20,000 people booing us, papers saying the worst I'd ever, and this letter let me know how bad I was as an individual. Now the second letter, I nearly threw this one in the bin, but I'm so glad I opened it because it's completely different. Dear Jamie, I think the loss against St Helens was a big setback, but myself and the majority of the proper fans still believe that you and the team can go on and win the grand final in October. I'm sure if you all stick together and work hard, you can turn this situation around. I also want to say how disappointed I was by some of our fans booing at you now that your move to Leeds has been made public. I think it was absolutely uncalled for, was contrary to the great friendliness that is more typical of rugby league as a whole. No one can doubt your commitment to the very end of the season, and winning the grand final will be the best way to end your career with the Bradford Bulls. I read this letter and I thought, wow, we're in uncertain times here and all we're doing is listening to negative people. When there's someone out here who believes in us, who believes we can do something special. And that's what the message needs to be to the players the next day. Tuesday then, the next day at training, I sit the team down, I speak to them about the letter. And say, if we're going to turn our season around and do anything about it, we need to start listening to the positive people who can influence us in the right way. Now, you could see it resonated with my teammates. I got a lot of nodding heads and some very good eye contact. But as you know, sport's about winning. We played the following week. We won that game. We won the week after that, the week after that, and the week after that. We won 15 games in a row. The last thing I ever did for the Bradford Bulls was this. Lift the Super League trophy in the grand final at Old Trafford in front of 70,000 people. We created history. We became the first side to finish outside the top 2 to lift that trophy. Now, I think as a team, we had a lot of hard work and self-sacrifice and commitment, but the turning point for me was in uncertain times to be successful was making sure we surrounded ourselves with positive influences and allowed them to influence our mindset. This allowed us to move from uncertain times, not sure whether we could win or not, to becoming champions at Old Trafford in front of 70,000 people. Second thing for me about dealing with uncertain times is self-development. I managed to play for close to 18 seasons, 550 times at the top in professional sport. And the way I was able to do that was to self-develop. And I'll take you through this process of it. When I first came through in professional rugby league, I was a try scorer. As you can see, I scored 35 tries in the red. That's what I brought to the team. But what happens in professional rugby league is every single week your opposition does a video analysis on you, looks at your strengths, looks at your weaknesses, tries to exploit your weaknesses and tries to negate your strengths, which meant for me, after 3 years, I was having lots of players around me stopping me scoring tries, which meant for me, I'm in an uncertain time because I've lost my USP. I've lost what I'm bringing to the team that's allowing me to be successful. Will I get back into this team? Now, what I realised was, I thought, I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to adapt to these uncertain times. So what I decided to do was learn how to offload the ball. So offload the ball means in rugby league, you take a tackle and pass the ball to somebody else. To acquire this skill, what I did was, the process was, I watched who was the best in the competition at doing, what was their technique. And I asked my coach to come up with a training drill, practice it for 3 times 15 minutes a week. and I changed the way I played the game. I self-developed. I went from offloading the ball once every 2 games to nearly 5 times a game. But again, in 3 seasons' time, in the arms race, which is sport, my opposition had caught up with me, which meant I was unable to offload the ball, which again led to uncertain times. You know, the skill that I had, my USP had gone again. So what I decided to do, I wanted to become and develop to be the fittest player in the country. I wanted to be the fittest player in the competition. So I stopped doing my offload drill and started doing extra fitness 4 times 15 minutes a week. And I became the hardest working player in the competition. Went from carrying the ball 10 times at the beginning of my career to 22 and 19 tackles to 35 tackles. I evolved as a player to deal with uncertain times. Then the final way I evolved as a player was in 2011. Now, something happened completely outside my control. A young player came into the game and changed the game, where the game was played in my position. He started passing the ball. Like, I'd never passed the ball in my position. Nobody had for 40 years. Now, at the back stages of my career, I was very well established. And the easiest thing for me to have done was say, no, that's it. I don't need to do this. But again, I realized times are changing, which means it could be uncertain for me getting back into the team. I needed to adapt. So I practiced passing the ball 3 times, 15 minutes a week. And I evolved one last time as a player, going from hard labour passing the ball to 6 times a game. That's the way I was able to evolve and a way to lead in the team by showing them that self-development's the way to stay relevant and stay within the team. Third thing I want to talk about, after self-development is a journey, not a destination, I believe that. The third thing I want to talk about is comfort zone. This is my thoughts on the comfort zone. The comfort zone is a wonderful place, but nothing ever grows there. 3 times in my career, I've had crossroads. I've had 2 big decisions to make. One would be to stay inside my comfort zone and stay where I was. The other would be go way outside my uncomfort zone, big times of uncertainty. And in these 3 decisions, every single time I made the decision to step outside my comfort zone into uncertainty. Through the other side of that, it allowed me to grow and be successful. I just want to talk through those 3 decisions. In 1998, I had been playing in the reserve team and I wasn't quite ready to make it into the first team at Super League. The coach, Matthew Elliott, said to me, for the following season, what I want you to do is go on loan for 12 months to another club. Now, I had 2 choices. I could go to Dewsbury, which is a small town less than 48 minutes away from where I lived in Leeds, or I could go to Wollongong, which is 2 hours away from Sydney, nearly 48 hours away from Leeds. Now, that would have been the biggest decision for me, the toughest decision to go to Sydney. As you know, in 1998, the world was a lot bigger place due to a lack of technology, but I thought, this is the one I've got to do. So age 19, I moved 12,000 miles away to play and live in Sydney. Stepped outside my comfort zone in uncertain times. Now, off the back of doing that, the following year, because of how much I learned about myself and how mentally tough I had to be living 12,000 miles away, I made my first team debut in 1999. The next big decision I had to make, times of uncertainty, was the end of my contract in 2005. At this point at the Bradford Bulls, I was captain of the side. It was a very easy place for me to be. I knew everybody. I've been there 10 years. Now I had a choice. I could stay there and remain captain inside my comfort zone, or I could move to our bitter rivals 10 miles across the way where I don't know anybody, but I've got a chance of growing and developing as a player. And I made this decision, I'm going to join the Leeds Rhinos. Now, off the back of these uncertain times of stepping outside my comfort zone, it allowed me to be in a team then that was successful for the next 10 years. Then the final point in my career where I stepped outside my comfort zone for uncertain times was in 2015 when I retired. Because I had a decision to make, I had a job offered for me at Leeds that would be really easy to move into after I finished playing, or I could go outside 70 miles away to be a head of rugby at Hull KR. Different club again, well outside my comfort zone, and I decided to make that decision, push myself then to do that. The amount I've learned from making that decision was huge. I wouldn't be here talking here today if I hadn't made that decision in uncertain times to push outside my comfort zone. Now, the final thing, which I personally invested on in uncertain times, was just a no limits mindset. Look, as a professional rugby league player, you're generally expected to retire at 30. That's when people think, you know what, it's time for you to move on. But I managed to play till I was nearly 38 years old. But I did something different as well. Instead of being uncertain about what my performance was going to be like, there was plenty of whisperings about was it going to be good enough to perform, could I keep to that certain level. I blew all these out of the water because age 35, 36 and 37, there was no uncertainty about what I was going to deliver for the team, because this is what everything I managed to accomplish. Age 35, 36 and 37, I played what I regard as my best rugby. I made certain that I would be in the team every week, and I've made certain I would leave a legacy as a player. Now, the way I did that, and one of the reasons was having a no limits mindset. Now, I got this no limits mindset from my dad because on the 24th of November 2011, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 terminal lung cancer. Now, in the phone call I had to my dad that day, he said to me, the oncologist has told me I've got 3 months left to live. And he said, do you know what though? I'm not having that. I'm not having someone tell me I've got 3 months left to live. Watch this. My dad didn't live for 3 months. My dad lived for 23 months. He refused to be pigeonholed, to be boxed in by anybody. And I thought to myself, that's the right way to be. That's the right attitude, a no limits mindset, what I'm going to apply to these uncertain times as a player. So as a player, I refused to be boxed in. I refused to be limited. I wasn't bothered what people had done before me. And by adapting that mindset, which potentially could be uncertain times, it allowed me to be successful as a leader. Now, I just want to weave this into why this is important, why these 4 aspects are important. Firstly, I'll show you about relevance, about what to do with an ultramarathon for me. So to do an ultramarathon, which is stepping into the uncertainty for me, I'm going to have to be a positive influence throughout the race, not only on myself, but on the people I'm racing with. I'm going to have to be the light in the dark places. It's going to be some real negative times. Self-development for me, when I finished playing, I could only run 10K. I've since run a half marathon, 3 full marathons, and now an ultra. I've developed to be a long distance runner. I'm going to be well outside my comfort zone. This is 30% further than I've ever run before in my life. The furthest I've ever run is a marathon with 100 meters of ascent. I'm going to do this with 2,000 meters of climb and 55K, but I'm going to love it because it's outside my comfort zone. And the 4th thing I'm going to deal with is no limits. I've had so many people asking, why are you going to do this? You're going to be too heavy to do it. I'm just start wearing that. I'm going to show them that I'm going to be capable of doing it. Now, what's this got to do with leadership? Why, as a leader, should you personally invest in these areas to lead in uncertain times? Because of this, they are you. I fundamentally believe, as a leader, there are lots of different techniques you can use, but one of the most important things you can do is the way that you behave. You can influence people by what you say, certainly, but it's how you behave sets the standards for any organization. And I believe in uncertain times, if you place an importance as a leader on being a positive influence, on making sure you're on a journey of self-development, on making sure you step outside your comfort zone, on making sure you've got a no limits mindset, what you can achieve as a leader and within your company, then that will rub off on everybody else. Everybody else within your organization will see they're the acceptable standards that they want to believe in. And I think how powerful that could be in uncertain times if you have an organization where your leader is a positive influence, self-developed, steps outside his comfort zone, has a no limits mindset, but then everybody else that works for them has that same mindset too. I think that is the way to deal with uncertain times. And the most powerful thing about this is there is 0 talent required to be a positive influence, to have an attitude of self-development, to step outside your comfort zone, to have a no limits mindset. All you need to do is just make a decision. You can just make a decision to focus in and personally invest in these 4 areas, and it will influence the rest of your organization. Because ultimately, I'll come back to these 3 words again. They are you. Now, they're the 4 areas. At the beginning of this, or yesterday, I promised a bit of a surprise. I'm going to end, okay? I played, I think, the most brutal and violent team sport on the planet for close to 18 years. But I'm going to finish today with a poem. I'm going to read a poem to you because I believe all these 4 areas are important in leadership. But there's one thing that stands out to me as a leader. You have to have the ability not to quit. You have to show some grit, some resilience, some intestinal fortitude. Now, the way I do that and the way that inspires me as a player, as a leader, is a poem. I had this poem on the inside of my locker door as a player. I'm going to have it in my bag when I'm running a marathon, and I'd like to close my talk with this poem. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turn about when he might have won had they stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow, you might succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often the struggler had given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learnt too late when the night slipped down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. You never can tell how close you are, you may be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when you hardly sit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. So that's been my story. That's how I believe you can be resilient and lead in uncertain times. And thank you very much for listening. And thank you very much, HMG and IT leaders, for having me on to close the conference.
Brilliant. Jamie, thank you very much. Big virtual round of applause. Thank you for being our closing presentation. I've shared Jamie's website in the chat. I'll just share it again now. There's a few of you asking about contact details for Jamie. Those are there in the website, and it'll give you a view on Jamie's Building Champions mentoring program. Jamie works with a lot of tech companies in helping their leadership and helping their leaders become better leaders, and it's always been inspiring and great feedback from anybody in the network. So blessed and delighted to have you here. As a man from Hull as well, it was great to see you come to Hull KR, and yeah, it's great to work with you now. Hunter, I'm going to hand over to, so thank you, Jamie. Hunter, I'm going to hand over to you to do the close. On behalf of UK ITL, I'd just like to say thanks to everybody for coming. Thanks to all of our guest speakers. Thanks to HMG as well. It's great to be a partner with them. For those who are new to our network, you can find, we have a free, all of our resources are free. We have a free private comms app that can be downloaded at the App Store or the Apple or Google stores. You can also get the details from ukitl.co.uk, and there's approaching 500 of the 1,000 in the network on there. There's no vendors, there's no even vendor IT leaders, no salespeople, no non-IT leaders, and hopefully all the folks that are in there would endorse that it's a great place to privately share information, because it's not stored and it's certainly not sent on anywhere else. So just IT leaders helping and collaborating and talking with IT leaders. So great panel today, great subjects, really blessed with everybody that's joined us, and blessed to have you folks as we topped over 150, have you folks as an audience as well. So thank you. Hunter, I'll hand the baton over to you to have the last word, my good friend and colleague.
Excellent, Graham. Can you hear me okay over there? Yeah. Great job. What a great summit. I hope everyone really enjoyed it. I think, without a doubt, our best UK summit to date. Jamie, really inspiring. I'm a big sports fan, and love. I thought your framework was spot on. Really a brilliant job there. And Bill Limond, if you're still on the Zoomcast, great job. Really, I can't tell you how delighted I am the way it all turned out, Graham and Dave and everyone. Hopefully everyone got a lot out of it. Looking forward, Graham, we have another date, right, for our next summit in a couple of months. Plus, I think you have something right around the corner here as well, if you want to plug it.
Yeah, so coming next in conjunction with HMG Live is end of November. We'll get that date to everybody shortly. Tomorrow we have a session which I think everybody in the network has seen a look at. That's a managed detection and response session. And then on Monday we have optimizing software estates for operational excellence. Those can usually be seen on the UK ITL website. They're released on the app, and as also for those that opt in a direct one-way, never any spam, a one-way invite mail, so no spam or chasing. So yep, we have a good calendar. Really looking forward to the next one.
Great. And you know, if you like today, we'll forward along a digital copy to everyone. I'll get you a signed one, Graham, you and Dave. But it's a great Christmas present for your complete IT team. How to lead, innovate courageously, passionately, authentically in the most highly innovative and disruptive times. A real global book with global application. Looking forward to our next time together. And big thanks to Darktrace for our partner today. And everyone enjoy your evening. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone. And thanks to Dave Jones, my UK ITL chair, who's been sitting in the background, making it all happen today. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, stay in touch. We're here if we can help.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, man.